All right, man, peace. So Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, and Will Kane decided that they were going to have a conversation in regards to who they view to be the most proficient and best offensive player in the NBA today. This is based off of certain comments that have been made by the Rockets head coach Mike D'Antoni, that he believes that his star player, James Harden, is not only the best offensive player today, but the best that he's ever seen in history. Now, we know that Mike is not being sincere about this. We know that he has to say that to pump up his players, pump up his star, and pump up his team, as he should, because they're heading into what presumably will be a very long playoff run. Anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
He's unique. I mean, yeah, that's the best offensive player I've ever seen. He does things. They're running guys to him. He just steps a little further back and makes a three. And the way he can pass and see the floor, get fouls, layups, floaters, maybe a lob, maybe out to the corner. I mean, he has so many weapons, and now he's shooting those step back threes. It's impossible to guard. It's impossible.
Well, Mike should be speaking like that. He should be happy to have a weapon on the level of a James Harden. But is James Harden the best offensive player in the NBA today? No, he's not. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that he's top two.
So Mike D'Antoni is making it official. He says James Harden is the best offensive player he's ever seen. Fellas, do you even think he's the best offensive player in the league right now, Stephen A?
Before Stephen A. Smith answers, let me say this. In regards to diversity of skills and the proficiency level of those diversity of skills, the best offensive player in the NBA today, in my view, is Kyrie Irving. He's the only player in the NBA today that almost maxes out at a 10 out of 10 on every criteria that you can think of, whether it be offhand finishing, strong hand finishing, mid-range jumper, back to the basket, drive and kick, pull up for three off the dribble, pull up for three off the catch. These are all things that Kyrie Irving is no lower than 8.5 out of 10, and then you count the fact that he's a clutch free throw shooter. James Harden, as great as he is not as good finishing with the right hand as he is the left. Kyrie's as good finishing with his left hand as he is his right hand, which is extremely difficult. Now, when you talk about a LeBron James, who probably is the most efficient offensive player in the NBA today, efficient is not the same as proficient. And as we all know, LeBron does come up short when it comes to free throw shooting, especially in the clutch. And his long-range shooting can be, it can be up and down. Kevin Durant is close in regards to Kyrie, but I don't think that Kevin Durant's left-hand finishing is as good as Kyrie's, and his clutch time free throw shooting is not as good as Kyrie's either. In regards to Steph Curry, Steph is right there also. You can also make an argument that he's most likely a more proficient offensive player than James Harden as well. So I probably have Kyrie number 1, KD number 2, Steph Curry 2A, and then probably James Harden. In regards to overall proficiency, efficiency, LeBron's number 1.
Well, first of all, right now, I'm not going to say that. I mean, when I look at LeBron James and the complete package that he is, he comes to mind. But I would give Harden the edge over a lot of guys. I wouldn't give him the edge over Kevin Durant. And all time, I certainly wouldn't give him the edge over Kobe or MJ.
Absolutely not. The best offensive player I've seen ever is Michael Jordan. The player who would get the hottest that I've ever seen is Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant's hot streaks were hotter than any other player that I've ever seen. Close number 2 may be Steph Curry, and then 3 probably Jordan. I can't really count Klay Thompson because Klay does most of his scoring off the catch. If we're just talking about off the catch, Klay probably gets hotter than any player in NBA history.
Or MJ. And I'm going to emphasize Kobe and MJ for a particular reason. I think both were capable of averaging 30 inside or out with their back to the basket, mid-range game, whatever the case may be. James Harden had a better long-range game than those guys. I think that isolation-wise, he's absolutely sensational.
I agree. In isolation, James is phenomenal. But it also aids him that in today's NBA, it's harder to put your hands on a guy, especially out there on the perimeter. I was having a conversation about this with my father the other day, and I told him today's NBA, the face-up game is much better, but what they're lacking is the post-up. Because he was asking me how I thought Jordan would fare in today's NBA. Michael would certainly have to convert his game over to the modern style, which is mostly face up, beat your man off the dribble, or pull up for three, drive and kick, or finish at the basket. It would be very easy for him because those were all skills that he mastered. But certain things like posting up, back to the basket game, which is what he utilized a lot, especially in the 90s, they don't really want guards doing that today. So I would see Michael playing a lot like how he played in the latter portion of the 1988-89 season when he averaged a triple-double. Shot 54% from the field. I think he would do something around that today. Probably average somewhere around 34, 35 a game. 9 assists, 9 rebounds. Shoot about 54% from the field, especially when you only have to beat one man to the basket. Like, it's so much easier to get to the basket today than it was back in the 90s.
You hang on his left, it could be problematic for him because even though he can use his right, he's not as ambidextrous as you would like him to be. It's just that, as a southpaw, Max can speak about this from a boxing analogy. It's hard when you're going up against a southpaw because it's unfamiliar territory to you, and James Harden is that guy. But I certainly would.
Yeah, James is arguably the greatest left-handed scorer in NBA history. I would have to think of another one, but offhand, I'm just thinking about him. Maybe David Robinson, but James is a greater natural scorer than David Robinson was.
Certainly wouldn't put that in. I would have put him as number one. I'd put Kevin Durant above him. I would kind of put him above LeBron James from the standpoint of his three-point shot and his reliability at the free throw line.
Yes, proficiency, I will put James above LeBron offensively, but efficiency, no.
LeBron James' three-point shot and his reliability at the free throw line are suspect to me compared to James Harden. But I wouldn't say that about Kevin Durant, and that's why I wouldn't put him above Kevin Durant.
Don't sleep, though. LeBron's three-point shooting is commensurate with James's. It's just that LeBron doesn't take as many threes. That's why I say efficiency, LeBron is above James. But what puts James over LeBron to me is that free throw shooting. Very key.
Ridiculous to call him the best offensive player of all time. He's Mike D'Antoni's guy. He's his muse. He runs the system, Mike D'Antoni's system beautifully.
Absolutely. Imagine if Steph Curry was running the Mike D'Antoni system and had carte blanche to take whatever shot he wants. Steph averaged 30 a game on 50% shooting in the Steve Kerr offense 3 years ago, which I think is very akin to the Boston Celtics offense in the mid-'80s, where Larry Bird would really only go for his when he was hot. That's how Steph Curry is. That's who Steph reminds me of in regards to his mindset. Not so much his skill set, but his mindset, Larry Bird, where he basically only goes for his when he gets hot. If Steph played in the Mike D'Antoni system where he had carte blanche to take all those shots like James Harden does, he probably averaged 35 a game easy until he damn stubbed his toe and sprained his ankle again.
And James Harden is a great offensive player. I don't want to make that unclear. James Harden is a great offensive player. But you have to adjust offense for the league in which it exists and for the system that you're running. James Harden, in a three-point happy league, in a high-scoring, high-possession league, on a team that you would expect to have the highest-flying, most three-pointer shot type offense, is putting up great numbers, of course. Is he a better offensive player than Michael Jordan? No. Than Wilt Chamberlain or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar? No.
Well, no, not for those eras. As you already accurately pointed out, Max Kellerman, Wilt Chamberlain was the best offensive player for his era, that being the 60s. Kareem was the best offensive player for his era, that being the 70s. So as you accurately pointed out, you do have to go by eras.
Then Shaquille O'Neal or Kobe Bryant in the leagues in which they existed? No. Then LeBron James today? No. Then Kevin Durant right now? Nope. If you put any of those guys on a Mike D'Antoni team, especially who was the highest usage player on a Mike D'Antoni team, they would put up absurd, cartoonish numbers. I mean, they do anyway.
Yes, they do, but I don't think that Kevin Durant would fit in as well in the D'Antoni system as James Harden does, because Kevin Durant will be asked to perform point guard duties or point forward duties, which is something that I don't think that he would want to do over a long-term time frame. In addition to that, KD gets fatigued over the course of a season. I don't know if it's just his physique, the lack of girth on his frame. He just wears down. And that's why he likes to play second banana. That's why he fits in so well with the Warriors, because he is the second banana there, even though he likes to act like he's not. He is, which he pretty much acquiesced to and acknowledged when he stated that we missed Steph Curry a couple of weeks ago. So I don't think that KD would fit in very well in the Mike D'Antoni system, as well as certain people might think. KD also likes to operate on the elbows more than the top of the key. Steph would be perfect in that system, though. He would. I mean, in that time period where Mike D'Antoni was coaching the Knicks and they were trying to get Steph Curry, he would have been so perfect with them.
But Harden is a great offensive player playing for a great offensive coach in a great offensive league, and my hat's off to him. You don't need to get into hyperbole to describe how great James Harden is, but I believe that's what Mike D'Antoni did.
Let's throw out the historical comparisons. I think we can all agree that's a little much. But as to who's the best offensive player in the NBA right now, let me just ask you this. Max, you're going to be the physics guy more than I could ever hope to be, but you're familiar with the idea of terminal velocity, right? You drop a brick or you drop a feather from a certain height, and they both reach the same speed at some point.
Well, that's speculative. That would have to be in a vacuum. It certainly wouldn't be atmospherically Will King.
James Harden is unstoppable, at least in the regular season. I don't know how you stop James Harden. I don't know how you stop Kevin Durant. Honestly, I don't know how you stop LeBron James either one-on-one. All of them can either shoot or get to the basket from any point on the floor at any moment. But the problem with Harden, I'm going to ask both of you guys is I think at some point we hold last year's playoffs against him. Because while he's unstoppable in the...
I damn sure do. I hold last year's playoffs against James Harden, and I will until he does something to nullify that performance, that disappearing act last season in last season's playoffs. I can't help that. I'm sorry. And I've said that from the very start of this season. He can come out, he can ball, he can average 31, 32 a game and do all the yelling and carrying on and cross over 5,000 times in between his legs in front of his defender, all he wants. A referendum for James Harden is going to come in this season's playoffs. Wouldn't mind seeing him win either. There's nothing wrong with the NBA trophy, going around or making cycles across the various elite level teams in the NBA. It'd be good for the league if Houston won. It would create much more of a dynamic of a rivalry between the Rockets and Golden State if Houston were to win. So it would be good for the NBA. The only thing is that they have to build up the Eastern Conference so that when they do get to the finals, people think that the Eastern Conference team actually has a chance to win. And I think the team of the future is the Boston Celtics. So they need to get them one more star. The Boston Celtics do. Because they already have Kyrie, and in my estimation, Kyrie is the most proficient offensive player in the NBA today in regards to his diversity of skills.
In the regular season, those other two have been unstoppable in the playoffs, and isn't that playing on us in the back of our minds?
Not for me. I look at James Harden, and I would say to you, in today's NBA system, with no interior defense, I guess you could say LeBron, because LeBron could get to the hole at will.
Thank you, Steve. Steve is really the only one who brings up the lack of interior defense in today's NBA. People don't understand. Back in the 90s, if Jordan beat John Starks off the dribble, he had to maneuver past Xavier McDaniels, Charles Oakley, Patrick Ewing, all at the bucket. Like, in today's NBA, you beat your man, you're at the rim. That's it. You're at the cup.
But again, his perimeter shot is not that of James Harden, and he is not as efficient from the free throw line.
And give today's NBA players credit. The 4-man, the 5-man are able to stretch the floor and force their defender to leave the paint so that the person who's handling the rock can get to the basket when they beat their man. Back in that era, your 4-man, your 5-man could not shoot past 10, 15 feet. They really were not even allowed to shoot past that range. So it's just the dynamics, the architecture of the game is different.
As James Harden. So if you said to me, who would I want? Just for the sole purpose of offense, not the all-around game, the basketball savant, the mind, the passing ability, etc. I'm talking strictly as an offensive scorer. I would take James Harden over LeBron James because I think he's more reliable as a shooter.
Over KD?
It's close, though. Harden and LeBron are very close. Very close. Main thing is that James Harden has the edge in free throw shooting. So in clutch time, he might be a bit more effective in regards to that. But jump shooting is very close, much closer than Steve may realize. And of course, LeBron's decision making is way better. So it'd be very close.
As a free throw shooter.
How about KD?
Not KD. No.
But also, listen, he's a more reliable free throw shooter. He's barely a better shooter than LeBron and not as good a shooter as KD. And by the way, when we say unstoppable, we need to think about what that really means. It means James Harden can seem to always get a high percentage shot and hit it at a good clip. It means James Harden can finish in the paint. It means James Harden can find open teammates. But it doesn't mean that James Harden can do any or all of those things better than other guys. In other words, because a guy can do all those things very well and we call him unstoppable, doesn't mean there's terminal velocity simply because we can say that about him, Will. For example, James Harden doesn't shoot nearly as well as Steph Curry. Steph Curry's a better shooter. James Harden doesn't have the handles Steph Curry has.
Well, that's close. That's close. James Harden's handles are very comparable to Steph Curry. I wouldn't say that Steph Curry necessarily has better handle than James Harden. Kyrie has better handle than both of them. And Kyrie's probably a better shooter off the dribble than either one of them as well. And probably a better finisher at the basket, even though I will say that Steph Curry has the highest shooting percentage around the rim of any guard in the NBA. So that's why, once again, Steph always gets left out of these conversations for whatever reason. Probably because he's not particularly explosive as an athlete. But he's right there with anyone. He to me is right after KD. And you could flip a coin between those two in regards to, in my view, who's the most proficient in overall offensive skill set after Kyrie Irving, who in my view is the number one in regards to offensive proficiency. Not efficiency, but proficiency.
James Harden cannot do all those things he does against an elite defense keying on him the way LeBron James can. So while it's kind of like what I said the other day when we put Tiger Woods number one on these athletes list. We flatten what it means to be an athlete. We create a common denominator, call golf a sport, call Tiger Woods an athlete, now say he's the greatest athlete. Right? We're kind of doing this.
Right, but once again, Max Kellerman, that's another red herring. If we were to create a greatest athletes list and you have Babe Ruth on there, do you think that Babe Ruth is as great an athlete as Carl Lewis? No. Well, that's not really the conversation. Basically, they're saying who's the greatest in their sport. Was Babe Ruth greater in his sport than Magic Johnson was in his sport? That's what those lists are about. It's not about you acting all anal and trying to discern and decipher what actually comprises an athlete based on actual athletic criteria and how valid the sport is and being considered part and parcel to a conversation about who's the greatest athlete. It's not about all that, man.
The same thing there. We're flattening distinctions here. James Harden can do all these things, therefore he's as good as you can be. Nope, because you can do each individual thing he does better, and some people do several of those very important things better than him and are...
Well, the question is, Max Kellerman, would you rather have a guy who can do 5 different things on offense at an 8 out of 10 level, or would you rather have a guy who can do 2 out of those 5 things at a 10 out of 10, and those other 3 might be 5 or 6 out of 10? It's up to you. Me personally, I take Kyrie because I feel like Kyrie in every aspect of offense is no lower than 8.5 out of 10. That's what I see with him. You can make the argument maybe 9 out of 10. But I would take Kyrie, KD, Steph Curry, throw them all in the bag and shake it up. Whoever you pull out the bag is would be fine with me. I would just say Kyrie because I think that Kyrie does a couple of things discernibly better than either one. I think that Kyrie's a better shooter off the dribble than Steph is. I think he has a far greater assortment of moves. He has spin moves. He has even better counters than Steph does. I think that Steph is very potent when he's dribbling off picks and pulling up off picks. Kyrie doesn't need picks. Steph really doesn't need them either, but Steph is better working off of picks than Kyrie is. But it is what it is.
And are therefore better offensive
Real
players.
quick, we're out of time. Stephen A., did you have it? So you had it KD, Harden, then LeBron. Is that what you had, Stephen A.? And Max, you have LeBron.
Just strictly as an offensive, just strictly as a scorer, yes.
And Max, you had LeBron, what?
Yeah, I'm not,
then KD. How far down was
I'm not
James
talking
Harden?
about score, I mean offensive player.
Yeah, I agree, because that's not the question. The question is not really scoring. The question is offensive player. So Steve is creating his own criteria. We're talking about the best offensive player. He's talking about everything wrapped up into one on the offensive end. That's why I say proficiency speaking, it would be Kyrie. From a standpoint of efficiency, it would be LeBron.
I have LeBron 1 and KD 2 as offensive players. All right?
Okay.
But anyway, that's it on that. All time, the greatest offensive player I've ever seen, obviously, was Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan could do things pretty much at will. He could do what he wanted at will on the offensive end. And he's probably the first wing player who could do whatever he wanted at will, either from a skill perspective or from an athletic perspective. That's what makes him, that's one of the things that makes him the greatest player, in my view, in NBA history. But in regards to today's game, the player who brings the greatest assortment of offensive skills is Kyrie, in my view, proficiency-wise. Efficiency-wise, Mr. LeBron James. But anyway, peace.